Welcome to Keep It Humane, the podcast, where we dive deep into topics surrounding kindness, compassion, and creating a more humane world, whether it's in our communities, in the workplace, or in the world of animal control and shelters. With our hosts,
Ashley Bishop.
And Ashley Bishop.
And I'm Daniel Ettinger. This show is sponsored by Tomahawk Live Trap. Check them out, livetrap.
Welcome. Wait, it's all three of us today. That's fantastic. I was wondering, because I wasn't supposed to show up for this episode. Did y'all have a job picked out for me that I was going to be doing?
I was going to try. I was trying to think of one, but I couldn't think of one. It's probably going to be something stupid like, I don't know, picking up poop on the side of the road.
Oh, I did that this morning when I walked my dog.
Hey, Bex, bitch.
That's funny. Well, thank you for joining us. We have an awesome show today. I'm excited. I'm not going to be here for most of the interview. As you can tell, I'm boarding a plane here in Long Beach. And it's pretty cool because you get to board outside. I don't know. Can y'all see this?
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You can't do this in Wisconsin because it's too cold. Your ears will freeze off.
Pretty much. It depends, but yeah.
What's the weather like right now in Wisconsin?
Right now it's 33 degrees. Yesterday
Gross.
it was like 60 some.
No.
Wait, Let me see if you could see this rainbow behind me. Check this out. Way back there. Pretty cool.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Check it out. If you're not watching on YouTube or Spotify, check us out there. You can watch these videos too. So, we got an awesome show. Shout out to Tomahawk Live Trap. They've been hustling these traps for 100 years, guys. 100 years, making some amazing, humane, awesome products. So check them out, livetrap.com. You can use discount code Keep It Humane in all caps. Again, Keep It Humane all together, all caps. I'm about to get on this airplane, and I wish I was going to be here the whole show, but I'm not. So you guys have a great time. Penny's going to be amazing guest. I talked to him offline. He's got some really cool history and just experience in this industry. So I can't wait to listen to this.
All right. Bye, Dan.
Okay. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
I don't know how to leave, though, so I got to figure that out, too. But
Dan in technology is about like Dan in reading.
Wow.
Tell me I'm wrong.
No, you're not. You're not wrong at all. The problem is I can't see my screen. So I'm like, how do I hang up this call? Oh, wait, here. Leave. All right, bye.
Bye. Oh, no, he left us alone again, guys. It's not a good thing.
Oh, the poor world.
I know it.
I've been squared.
I've been on vacation, folks, for about a week now, and I'll go back to work until tomorrow. So I'm trying to get back in the hustle bustle. Shout outs to my team. I didn't get bothered at all. Nice. Shout outs to them. So I'm excited to get back to it and everything like that. How about you, Ash?
Well, I've also been off of work, but not in a pleasant way for those of you that can't see it. Check it out on the videos. One hand is probably 3 times the size of my other hand. I got the worst bite of my entire 20 plus year career on Thursday. So 9 stitches between both hands.
I have been so lucky, man. I have probably gotten bit twice in my 16, 17 year career. One of them did break the skin. But other than that, the other one, I got bit by a Great Dane who unfortunately was at the end of their life, and they were just quicker than I was, and I just got bruised, and my hand was about the size of Lee's.
Yeah,
but girl.
Yeah, and it's so the weird thing for me was like it was because I was putting a cone on the dog, and like he was doing the typical like pull away, move away thing, but like this happened on Thursday, and on Monday he had injured his paw, and he was letting me like manipulate his paw, look at his paw. I put a cone on him on Monday. He was perfectly fine with it. Like he was such a good boy up for it. But like this is So, for anybody that is not aware of the Ian Dunbar scale, check it out online. And actually, Dan and I got to talk to Dr. Ian Dunbar. So
Nice.
there's another episode out there about that. Um, but like reviewing his bite scale, um, because I was actually there and involved, I can say that this would absolutely be a level 5 bite. Um, and not because the second bite was, the half the depth of the canine tooth, but because both times it was not a bite and let go. It was a bite and hold and pull. Like he was gonna bring me in that kennel with him. Um,
Mm.
so
Huh.
yeah, I am supposed to go back to work tomorrow. I don't know if I can because I can't quite do a pincer grasp on my dominant hand. So not sure how that'll work out for me, but here we are.
Mm. Well, many healing prayers for you, Lee, and hopefully that you can get back to work pretty soon. Because, man, I know bites in general are just not fun, folks. And I know
Yeah.
for most of us in the industry, we get lucky enough to where it's like, man, we get 10 years into it if you last that long in this industry. And then it's just like the worst bite of your life happens at some point in your career. It's just sometimes it's just inevitable. You can be the biggest dog whisperer in the world, and it's still probably going to catch up with you. Um,
Well,
but
and the
yeah.
reality is, of course, I should put this there too. So it was not a pit bull.
Mm.
Just want to throw that out. It was a Kangal Shepherd.
Mm.
So I'm really counting myself lucky because I easily could have lost my thumb or worse because he was over 100 pounds, and that was because he's underweight.
Ugh,
So
that's a big dog.
yeah,
Ooh, that's a big
very big
dog.
dog that normally is bred to fight things like coyotes. So yeah,
Ugh.
but we can move on from my woes and introduce Kenny.
Yeah, well, introduce our guest today, guys. Kenny. Kenny, you want to tell us who you are, how you came into the animal world, and kind of where you are right now?
Yeah. Well, first, thanks for having me. I'm always grateful and appreciative of opportunities to just kind of talk with folks in the industry and meet new people who I haven't had that much interaction with. So, first, just appreciative of that. And, I think I live in New Orleans now. I'm from Boston originally. So if you need to put closed caption at the bottom from my accent, I won't take it personally. Um, but so, I think I have an interesting path into animal welfare. I always loved dogs, but I never kind of set forth into the industry intentionally. I was a teacher in Boston and a social worker. I did a lot of work with kind of gang intervention and kind of work with kind of um, at the time what we used to say like kind of marginalized youth. I did a lot of work, like worked in group homes, and I did a lot of work with that. And I've also worked in martial arts and boxing myself. So I did a lot of stuff with trying to give kids um, kind of on the fringes outlets and ways to anger management and stuff. And I just always had my dog with me. And I didn't really know anything about dogs. And I had pit bulls usually because I'm 56. So at that time, yeah, and still today, sadly, we haven't made as much
Hmm.
progress. That was the dogs you found. And
Mhm.
I loved them and they were athletic. So they could be my jogging partner and practice jujitsu with them. And kind of that led me to I had a dog named Yo-Yo who was a little bit bonkers, hence the name Yo-Yo. And I needed help. I needed help with them, and I found a behaviorist and trainer in Boston. And through that process, I fell in love with trying to understand dogs. I couldn't. I always was good with dogs, but I didn't really know the science. And so through helping that dog for my own pet, I really fell in love with it and started studying in the summer. Working in the public schools, you have the summer off. So I started studying with the behaviorist and mentoring with trainers and ultimately became a dog trainer. And I was doing a lot of work with kind of dogs that were struggling in the shelter to get adopted. Big dogs, active dogs, a lot of pit bull type dogs, dogs called pit bulls at least, which we know can be
Yes,
everything in
thank
the
you.
shelter. And And then through that, my first kind of real professional experience was I started doing these free dog training programs with a lot of the students and at-risk kids I was working with, and they ended up being rival gangs. And we would like sign this peace treaty, and I started and we would do weight pulling and agility. And through that, really, I found this awesome way to connect with the kids, which at the time was who I was working with, through the dogs. Like the pride that they had in their dogs when their dogs would do a trick or win a weight pull contest was just really inspiring to me. And you fast forward years later, HSUS, Humane Society of the United States, found out what I was doing, and Animal Farm Foundation, which is a very close friend of mine, Bernice Clifford, who was my mentor, taught me everything I know about training dogs. Ultimately, I landed in Philly, running originally the End Dogfighting program in Philly for HSUS, and we morphed that into Pets for Life, which became a big national program. And that was kind of where my career in the industry started. But I've always loved working with people and communities and that end of the leash. And there wasn't really a space for that in animal welfare. We were so focused, on the dogs, and we weren't focused on the people and the conditions around, particularly poverty and kind of a lot of the social issues. And that's how Pets for Life kind of got born, along with some other great people. Clearly obviously wasn't just me. And then I ended up at Best Friends for a few years, running their grassroots department, just trying to engage community. For me, it's always been about how do we tap into people to help dogs. I love cats too, but it was always more about dogs for me. I love all animals. But for me, I saw this void that we just weren't connecting with people, particularly, certain segments of the population, right?
Mhm.
Where adoption wasn't the norm in certain communities. Spay and neuter wasn't the norm in certain communities. And it just seemed like, these dogs were dying in shelters and just sitting there struggling and rotting away. And I said, Pete, there's places where people love these dogs. We got to get them connected better. And, that's kind of how I ended up in the industry, like through all those intersections of people and social issues and just a love for dogs. And now I do consulting. Not all animal welfare, but I'm working with some shelters on the same thing, on community. I'm old school, so to me, community engagement happens in real life, like on the ground,
Yep.
on people's porches, in the neighborhood, not so much on the internet. And I think now we do a little too much on the internet, and we like to call it community engagement when it's really just online marketing. And we're gonna miss the people who need us most, frankly, at that way. And so that's what my heart is in, kind of old school grassroots, meeting people where they are, getting out there and trying to connect people with information and services so their dogs get to stay in their homes, don't end up in our system at all. So
You bring up a really good point, Kenny, about us using the online marketing and not hitting our target communities, where I feel like a lot of our issues stem from. When you got started in this, I'm assuming it was a little bit difficult to kind of really reach those communities without coming in and them taking it the wrong way.
yeah, for sure. Well, you guys know, like, so I was this close to being an ACO for the MSPCA
Hell
in
yeah.
Boston. I did a ride along, I did the interviews, and got offered the job. And in Massachusetts, you had to go to the State Police Academy because they were part of the state police. And I think you may even know Scott Giacopo. I did my ride along with him probably
Nice.
25 years ago, and just by luck, I got offered another opportunity right at the same time, and I took that one. But I think one of the biggest struggles initially was a lot of those communities, particularly marginalized, underserved communities, where a high percentage of the population is typically not white. The only connection they've ever had was usually punitive. So their relationship with animal control was typically not a positive one, right? And this was 20 years ago. I think there's been tons of progress made and in the right direction, which is great to hear, but we're still obviously have a long way to go. But I think most of the people I met had never been to a shelter or didn't even know where the shelter was. And if they did see animal control, it was usually the old, the old narrative. They were the dog catcher. They were going to come
Mhm.
take my dog away, not be a resource to help. And so, kind of building that relationship, we had to kind of undo on both ends some stereotypes on both ends, because our
Mhm.
industry also would frankly see those communities as maybe people in a negative light sometimes, which I had to kind of do a lot of kind of repairing the relationship on both ends. Animal welfare, in general, tend to blame communities more than want to help, and blame the public often for our problems more than help. And the community itself, there was a lack of trust, and the relationship was kind of just fractured. And so a lot of the work, for the beginning, was kind of mending that relationship and trying to get people. You know how life is. 90% of the time, you sit down and talk with people and you realize you have more in common than you do not. But we weren't doing that.
Mhm.
We just weren't physically there. So, again, like you said, you can't fix relationships on the internet. And
Mhm.
Well,
you know,
and I want to like kind of branch off from that too. Like with everything that we've got going on with all of the AI stuff, I am literally every time I get a message from, maybe I'm playing a game online and uh I'm like I get a message from somebody saying, "Hey, how's it going?" Whatever. My instinct is to go either A, it's a scam, or B, it's AI. And
Yeah.
so, although technology needs to be our friend because we need to be able to utilize it, I think we need to find this happy medium of go out, be in the public, show the people that you are real, but then also because there are, you know, I've worked with Kyle from Tomahawk Live Trap at some of the conferences. And one of the things that he has been trying really hard to get me to do is to sometimes leave the table because there are some people that just they don't necessarily want to communicate. They don't want to have the pressure of having somebody there while they're looking at things. And so there's a benefit to both sides of the internet where you're not pressuring the person. They can ghost you, or you can be there in person and show them that you are really there, you care, you're just like them, you are human.
yeah, no, I agree. I think so. I'm gonna control myself to not go down the rabbit hole with technology. So my own personal approach to technology is, as long as I'm using it and it's not using me,
Mm.
and that my real life work is congruent to whatever I'm showing on the internet, right? Like I actually several years ago, I don't have Facebook or Instagram. The only social media I have is LinkedIn. And I did that intentionally, because
Good for you.
I found it very toxic. And I thought that whatever benefit did come from it personally just wasn't worth having it. And I think one of the problems too that we see now, it's easy to become a rock star on the internet. It's easy to get tons of followers and kind of curate an image of how awesome you are and the great work you're doing and the impact and success you're having. And unfortunately, in our world today, not just animal welfare, I'm speaking holistically, that doesn't always represent real life. And we know this. We have people who are curating a whole kind of virtual self on the internet. And I think even organizations, nonprofits, are doing it as well. And I'm a big integrity and authenticity is to me what matters. I'm always me. Anyone who knows me, I don't bullshit anybody. What you see is what you get. If I say it, I'm doing it, and I mean what I say. I say what I mean, and I think the internet has made that very blurry for people. And again, I'm talking society, like beyond just animal welfare, but even in animal welfare, you have groups that are out there and individuals who you think that they were doing this unbelievable work, and it's not always true. And I want to hold myself to a higher standard. So when I do work with other people, I'm not a hypocrite, And to me, there's one stat. I know we're obsessed with stats and animal welfare now, and everyone's got a database. And we're putting all this in stats. And I think data is important. But to me, there's one stat that has stayed almost the same for 25 years that sums up our industry. So pet ownership every year basically goes up. Every year, there's more people with pets in their homes, right? And every year, it almost never gets to 30% that the way people acquire their pets is through rescue and adoption and sheltering. It varies. Sometimes it's 22, sometimes it's 28. But think about that for a second. In all these years, give or take, 70% of the pets that are in people's homes did not come through us. Think about what that says. We live in a country where people love their pets. People are choosing pets over having children. People love their pets. Me too. Right? I raised my hand with you, Ashley. And we love pets. It's a billion-dollar industry, the pet retail space. People love pets. They're in TV commercials, they're in movies, they're everywhere. And we're not even getting 30% of the people who love their pets to get them from us. And to me, we blame that on the public, but we should look in the mirror first, right? The first step to growing and evolving and doing better, no matter what, is if you want to I work out every day, right? If you want to get in shape, you got to go to the gym. You got to eat better. You got to put in the effort. You got to work at it. If you want to change anything in your life, you have to look at yourself in the mirror first, right? As an industry, I don't think we do that enough. I think we always look out, and we want to look at all these reasons why that number is true, why we're only getting to 30% on it when it's good, instead of looking at ourselves. And I think, the internet contributes to that, where we think that putting our spay neuter programs and our adoption programs online, and then we're done. And I tell people all the time, and then I'll stop for a second, and feel free to tell me to shut up because I can talk on forever. I've said this to people. I've worked in almost all 50 states, including on some on reservations, right? Including Alaska over the 20 years I've done this work. I've said one thing to every shelter I've worked at. Where do all the dogs that you have come from? They didn't get imported from another continent. They almost always came from within probably a 5-mile radius of where you are. At some point, every dog in your building was wanted by someone not far from where you are physically. And if we just got them all fixed, put them in a van and drove them back to those neighborhoods and engaged people in a positive way and offered support, maybe a bag of food and a leash and a collar and a little 20-minute thing on how to live most effectively with your pet, we'd get them all adopted by the end of the week. But we tend to not do that. We sit in our buildings waiting and say no one wants these. I push back whenever people say no one wants to adopt these dogs. I refuse to accept that reality. I think we've accepted that, but it's not true. We're spending thousands of dollars to put them on planes and fly them across the country when they were wanted 5 miles down the road at one point. And the relationship with those communities has been damaged, and I think if we work and invest more time and money in that area, I think the problems that we have can be solved in our own community first. We just have to invest in that work more than we, and I get that it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy. I know how hard it is to work in a shelter every day and to get the staff time to get people to go out and do that. But until we flip the script and invest more greatly in our local communities, that number, that pet acquisition number is not going to change. And to me, that's the problem. Imagine if that was 50, imagine if just 50%, if just half of the pets came through rescue and adoption in our community, we wouldn't have pets dying in shelters the way we do.
So if you had to give your top 3 things that shelters should do to be able to increase their adoption rates, what would it be?
To me, it comes back to what I just said. I think we've got to get the dogs physically out of the building, out into the community exponentially more than we do. Exponentially more than we do. I think, so that's the first thing. And I think we also, as much as we talk a good game at conferences and internets, we're still too judgmental, and we still put up too many obstacles for people to have pets. I think we're doing better. And I don't like to come on in a public forum like this and just trash our industry, because I will say it again. I think we have the most passionate, like, kind people who work in animal welfare. It's exhausting, difficult, emotionally draining work. I don't mean it to sound like I'm coming down. It's more institutional versus individuals. I love the people in animal welfare, and I think we have the biggest hearts and work harder than anyone for crap money, and we're exhausted and beat down. Our hands are chewed up. I get it, right? Right? But we have to kind of be less emotional about it. And I think so. The second thing is we just have to do a better job of removing obstacles. So we have to physically get dogs out in the community, also proactively, so before they end up in the shelter. But you asked about adoption. So I think we have to remove obstacles like lengthy applications and extraneous background checks, and just personal relationships. We have to just do better at engaging people. So I think that those are the two things. And the third thing is we have to use community partnerships way better. There's faith-based organizations and schools and YMCAs and community-based organizations that work on domestic violence and that work on food banks for people, and healthcare providers and public health providers. There's all these institutions, social workers, which is what I used to be, who are already plugged in to families in these communities that were not in that much, right? We need to partner with them more effectively. And so when they're out there, they're promoting our animals, and they're facilitating adoptions and foster families and outreach events at farmers markets. We at every farmers market, and right now my wife is at a farmers market, and she took my dog, who if she wasn't with him, he'd be sitting on that couch, who's a big old rescued pit bull. He's a big white and blue dog. And he sat at the rescue, you'll hear this story a million times, for 6 months with no application. And he didn't present well. He would, how you guys know how it is when you go see a dog in a kennel, they're bouncing off the crate. It's loud, it's hectic. It's the worst place to meet a dog that you're going to bring into your home, right? And we know this. But at the farmer's market, he's just a big, happy, goofy meatball. And so to me, we have to better utilize and better foster partnerships with the existing organizations, institutions, and individuals that are already in the community. We have to find a way to get staff who are good people out into the world with dogs more often, and also volunteers. And then we have to look in the mirror more honestly and authentically with ourselves, and remove the judgment that at every conference now, there's all these sessions about not being judgmental, and everyone's putting out toolkits. And I think we're making progress, but we're still, and it comes from a good place. I believe this. The thought of us putting a dog in a home that isn't good enough comes from a good place. That's good intention. But we forget that life in a shelter sucks. It sucks. The best, most beautiful shelters with the best, most loving, kind, compassionate people in the world still sucks for a dog, right? We know this. And so even if the home isn't perfect, oftentimes it's still better than the shelter. They still have people in their lives. And I think we have to kind of be about what we talk about a little bit more, and remove those obstacles that we're self-inflicting, right? Sometimes we're working in shelters that are overpacked and overworked. And sometimes part of the reason is our own doing. So that's, to me, it's remove our own obstacles, wherever they may be, get out of the building more, and bet much more effective use of community partnerships. There's a lot of other things out there as well, but to me, those are the top three for me.
I agree. I think, for me, I have a background in veterinary public health and epidemiology. I am the I am the person that loves the viruses, and so I have a little bit of different take. My big thing, so I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley, my hometown of Brownsville, where it is just astronomical. I mean, the problem, I got introduced to animal welfare in probably one of the worst places in America for companion animals.
I've been to the Rio Grande Valley.
I just came back from there. We went home for my anniversary and my birthday and stuff to see my grandmother. But For me on the municipal side, because my main goal has always been to change the aspect of the municipal shelter, of the animal control officer, and what we are providing to the community. I think what a big problem of our industry has been is that we're either going extremely one of two ways. It's either get them all out and not really care about where they're going, or two, being so stringent about, without having the conversation with those people. And I feel like right now, especially, is that we haven't found that middle ground. And I feel like one of those sides is a lot louder than the other,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And it hurts those like myself and my facility and our town, where we're known as the kill shelter. Don't go help them, go help the shelter that is considered or been awarded this no kill, status, or whatever the case might be. When in reality, we need to be helping everybody, not just one certain facility or not. So I think, coming from my background, sometimes I get a little jaded. Sometimes I see kind of in my little box sometimes. And I realize that as long as I've been doing this. But, Kenny, how do we get beyond that? I see, we have a lot of large municipalities here in Texas, as I'm sure you know, who are just getting berated. I mean, every day, I see their poor social media. Their staff is getting absolutely berated, getting called murderers, getting called whatever the case might be. How do we get past that? How do we get past to the community that every shelter needs help regardless of its status, because we're all trying to do what we can with the resources that we have.
Yeah, no, really well said, and I appreciate it. So I think, unfortunately, we're at a tough time as a society where we're either way over here, which means if we're over here, everyone over here is the devil and the worst person in the world, and they're awful, or we're way over here and we struggle to see anything good from each pole. And we really struggle to move closer to do this, right? And so I completely agree. And it's funny. This is kind of a joke, but it's a sad joke. I think the whole world learned from animal welfare. Somehow, this has always been true in animal welfare. But now the whole society is like this about everything, right? So it's twisted. I'm like, we're used to polarity in animal welfare. Now the whole country is gone into politics and social issues and everything and the other, which is sad. So I think there's two pieces of this. One, and I know this is hard for people to do, but a lot of the rhetoric and the vitriol that happens does happen on the internet. And I'm not just gonna say the internet's evil and blah 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 blah. But sometimes the simplest thing is just stop fucking reading that shit. And I know you guys told me I could curse. So
absolutely, absolutely.
Because the truth is, and I live this, I'm a person who, if you could see all my legs are portraits of my pit bulls that have passed, tattoos, right?
Hell yeah.
I love dogs. And I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but at one time, I worked with Michael Vick when he got out of prison when I was at HSUS. I was one of the main people. I went to high schools and talked to kids with him. I helped build a program with him. And the amount of hate mail, thank God at the time I didn't have social media, the amount of emails and vitriol I got was overwhelming, right? And I remember telling people, I'm with this person every day trying to do good, to use him as a tool to take something disgusting that I have no empathy for what was done in that world. I think it's deplorable and disgusting, and you deserve to be punished and go. But then afterwards, if this person still exists in the world and is famous in public, let's use him as a tool to do good, right? And I think in today's world, what you said is every shelter. I have no problem talking about no kill. I believe no kill. There's two angles the way I look at it. I think whether we want to admit it or not, and I'll say I worked at Best Friends, like there's of all the national groups, they're doing more on the ground in real life with real people in real shelters than all the other big national groups combined. And it's just true. That what's also true, which is hard to do, is to hold two truths at the same time. That the idea and term of no kill can create tension in our industry and could create polarity and vitriol and hurt feelings.
Chaos honestly.
And it can. So there's two things that are true. I believe this organization is doing more for anyone in sheltering and communities and people. And I will never condemn Best Friends because I've watched it and I saw what they do. I think the concept of no kill is a good one. The idea of no kill is a good one. Unfortunately, individual human beings take it and run with it, and it becomes other things, and then it becomes this whirling thing to fight about. Just like what we see with politics, we saw with issues around gender and race. People make a comment and then it turns into a race argument on the internet, or people make a comment about gender, so this thing on the internet. And that's not always the intention of the people who started it, right? So I think I don't want to go down the rabbit hole with it, but I completely understand. It's about the fifth rabbit hole reference I made. I'm gonna reel that one in. But I think that back to your original question, how we heal it is what you and the three of us are doing right now. I bet there's things we disagree on, but I bet there's a whole bunch more stuff we agree on. And I always say, focus on the stuff we agree on, and let's try to cultivate and build that relationship and work on that, and talk behind the scenes about the stuff we disagree on to try to find common ground. Like, I've yet to see what good comes from fighting. Like, you hear a lot of talk about, we got to bring people together, we got to be united, right? And this is not an attack on you guys, I promise, because I wouldn't be here if I didn't think highly of what I see you guys do. But what's to be gained from yelling about how awful no kill is all the time? And what's to be gained from yelling about how great no kill is all the time? All it does is create more fighting, right? If we would invest that same amount of energy on time on what we say we want to do, which is bringing people together, we'd have less division. But we don't. Some of it's human nature, some of it is the internet, and some of it is the world we live in now. And we have to fight the urge to not fight. I know it sounds like pie in the sky, but it's true. We love friggin' fighting. Like, people love to fight and argue, and we spend more time trashing what we consider the enemy to what we do than we do lifting up the people. Like, so to me, this is only my personal approach to it. I just don't participate. And trust me, I'm married to a black woman, right? In Louisiana.
Hell yeah, interracial. Me too. I'm married to a white male, but you know.
Yeah, well, I don't know why.
I love interracial.
Yeah, why would you marry a white guy? I'm kidding.
Because I'm Hispanic, that's why.
I know. I'm a white guy. So you know, my wife and I have faced like some stuff in our time together, and I always say, you know, I'm trained in martial arts in several different disciplines of martial arts. I have black belt. Like, I'm 6'2", 210 pounds. I'm from Boston. Like I don't want to get into a fight with anyone or argument ever again, but I could if I wanted to, right? But all it does is make my life worse. And I think the same thing is true professionally and on the internet. Like, I just want to find and try to live to a standard of what brings people together than what divides us. And I think our industry just isn't good at that. We spend too much time yelling at each other and being mad at the things that trouble us versus bringing people together. And I think on this podcast, there will be people who will be mad at me just for being here talking to you. And that's insane. It's insane. Because I'm not a person, I'm not going to walk around and saying no kills like the greatest thing in the world, and that like it's some sort of cult of and everything's beautiful and positive. I think, like anything else, including me as an individual, everything's a mix of good and bad, and we all need areas of improvement and areas of evolution. I think for me, like, I worked in McAllen, Texas for a little while, which is in your hood, right?
Palm Valley. Yeah, Palm Valley.
And I saw some really great things happen, and then I saw some huge gaps in what happened. I did community outreach in McAllen, and you know, I got 350 people, just community members, to sign up to want to help animals and work with the shelter. And you know, that was years ago. I don't know what happened with it, but to me, again, like, I know I went all over the place there, but to me, let's focus on doing the good work, and let's use whoever wants to help us do good work. And just resist the urge to fight. Resist the urge to trash the people we disagree with, and kind of focus on, how do I talk to them? Like, to me, if I was a person who was worried about no kill or I love no kill, I want to focus on talking to the people who I don't see eye to eye with almost exclusively to figure out what's working from your perspective and how can we be more understanding of each other. How could people come to Ashley Rodriguez Bishop and say, I see how this is causing you trouble in your work. I see how this is causing you angst and emotional stress and trauma, and I see how people are being beat up. How can we fix that together, right? And I'm not sure that those conversations are happening enough, frankly. And that's where how you ask how we can fix it. That's how we could. I would love for you to have a meeting with all the biggest advocates on the other side, and it'd be honest, not just bullshit to put on the internet. Like, to be honest, how can we make your life easier versus harder? Because I think if you could really listen, I'm sure, because you just said it on here really eloquently, that like you see it's making your life and some of your colleagues and friends' lives harder and harder for them to help pets, right? And help people. And I don't think anyone wants that. I don't think anyone on either side wants that to be the result.
No, yeah, absolutely. And I think Dan and Ashley, before I jumped on, we're doing a great thing by opening that conversation. And we still do, that conversation is absolutely open because, as we've said in the past before, is, if we could just change a little bit of how we see things or do things, I think it would bring us all to that middle ground where everybody can kind of see what's going on. For me, again, we're very transparent as a municipality. We have to be, one, because we're a government entity, obviously. But two, it's always been my motto in animal welfare is let the community know what's going on. Let them know when that animal enters your facility, what could or could not happen. I mean, that is the reality of things. My numbers, again, they are everything that comes in through the shelter, whether it's a, hit by car raccoon, hit by car skunk, a deer, whatever we bring into our facility counts towards everything in our facility because that is an animal's lives that we have physically touched. So I think.
I only interrupted for a second. I apologize.
No, absolutely.
Because you're so right, and that's one of the big problems. We create this illusion of what happens in the sheltering world. Particularly, you are a government. I mean, when you're a municipality, the amount of kind of red tape and bureaucracy you have to deal with just to get to do your job. The public has no idea. So all they see is cute little fuzzy picture of a dog that's going to get put down and a bunch of people on Facebook, right? Again, Facebook. This dog has 20 minutes to live. Blah, 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 blah. They're going to kill him. And like,
hate those. Hate them.
Loses their mind. And they lose their mind because they're ill-informed, right? Yeah. Because we're not transparent enough. They don't lose their mind. And then it's human nature. I studied psychology and I was a social worker before I did this, right? When there's something that we see that really hurts us, our first instinct is we have to have a villain. We have to have someone to blame. And so they're going to blame you, the shelter, right? And they don't realize that it's a system of things and levers and stuff that move around. That is why that dog might not make it out of the shelter. It's not because Ashley, who works at the shelter, is a horrible person and wants to kill a dog. I'm yet to meet a person in all these years who works in a shelter who wants to kill a dog. No one wants that. But the public is ill-informed. But again, if we look in the mirror, whose fault is that? And that's why I agree with you. If we invest more time in being transparent and in the way we communicate more effectively and say, hey, we are up against it. Dogs will die, and we hate that more than you. We're the ones who have to suffer through that process more than you. Help us so we don't have to do it. No one wants this. And we communicate that more effectively, more broadly, particularly in the communities where we know, it's funny because I love advocates. And in our welfare, advocate becomes a bad word, right? Because we're jaded because we think advocates are going to attack us. But they don't if they're well informed, right? If they're and whose job is that? Like that falls on us, right? Like we have to inform them better. And it gets mixed up because of fundraising and because of social media and all these things. But you're right. And to me, I don't think that's any one entity's fault. It's
Nope.
a collective,
Mm-hmm.
it's a collective failure, right? We've done a bad job. Even if you just go back to the old all the commercials on TV, right? The sad Sarah McLachlan commercial. And I don't think there's anyone who likes those commercials, but when you raise millions and millions of dollars with sad, commercials, it's hard to stop doing them, right? And then the public sees it, and what do they hear? Oh my God, these dogs are going to die at the shelter. These people are awful. And it becomes this whole narrative, and social media and the internet just put that on steroids, right? Because this was true in the 70s and the 80s and the 90s too, but every person couldn't share and and put that out to the world for millions of people to see it. And it's just like politics, it's just like Democrats and Republicans, and everyone's just like, you're either Hitler or you're, Nelson Mandela now, right? There's no middle ground. And animal welfare has kind of fallen into the same trap.
Well, and I think that has been one of the biggest things that we've taken issue with on the podcast is that, I mean, I'll say it because you brought it up obviously there's the issue of the no kill movement, the best friends, the slogan, and I stand by the fact that best friends absolutely does some good work. But it's that slogan, the no kill, save them all, that is a problem because the community doesn't understand, because it is not appropriately getting, explained. Um, like, so let's take, for instance, this dog that bit me. This dog could kill somebody,
Mm-hmm.
And that is the reality of it, because he is bred in for protecting farm animals. And I have absolutely no issue with that until he turns that aggression to a person.
Of course, of
And,
course.
and now, you know, and I'm not going to say one way or another, what's going to happen with him, because I don't know at this point. But if somebody says, no, no kill, we can't, we have to save them all. What is potentially going to happen to another person that is not experienced in animals?
Or the opposite, where that animal has to sit until the end of its life at a shelter because nobody wants to make that decision.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that is, and it's more of and I recognize that best friends as a whole generally would not say save that dog. Like, they understand the
Yeah.
safety component behind that. So this is absolutely not bashing best friends on that. This is a community problem
The
because they
rhetoric.
don't understand, because the only thing that they are seeing online is the words save them all, no kill, and they don't understand. And that's where we need to get out. We need to educate the communities. And I think it needs to be done boots on the ground, because just reading it, you can skim through things and, only pick up bits and pieces. So tying back in that, let's get out of our shelters, let's get out of our comfort zones and go boots on the ground with some of this stuff. But also working together with everybody to be able to explain this better to the public, who are very uneducated when it comes to the animal welfare side of things.
I I agree with you completely. Like, and you know how we live in a world where, again, I live my life, and I a little bit differently than a lot of people do. And like, to me, I think we give words too much power in general, right?
Yeah.
Like the whole idea of like words in general, we give words too much power. And I think the problem is, no matter what the term is, and in this case, when we're talking about no kill, it's like, even if let's say that was replaced with another term, there'd still be a segment of the population that would take the new term. Like, if you tomorrow got hired and they said, you can decide, we're going to get rid of the term, we've heard what you said, what's the new one? No matter what you came up with, there'd be a segment of people that would have a problem with that one too, right? So I think we're so hung up on the words and whether or not, and what damage they do or what good they do. And I'm not saying it's not There isn't truth to it. But if we focus less on the words and we focus more on the transparency and the information and creating a more informed public, then we don't have as much of a problem. Because it's true in politics, it's true with social issues. Think about what happened with issues like gender and race, right? Like, we got obsessed with teaching so many people how to use the right terms. But did they change their hearts and minds all the time? Did they change the way they live their lives? Now what we've done a lot of times is teach people how to not get in trouble by using the wrong words while they still hold hateful, ignorant beliefs in their heart. And for me, I'd rather focus on trying to change the uninformed heart from that. An uninformed heart and an uninformed mind leads to ignorance. It sometimes leads to violence and it leads to hate down the road, right? And it doesn't matter how much better of a word we give people. Sometimes all we're really doing is teaching people how to not get in trouble with the wrong words.
Yeah.
And we haven't changed how they are as people. No one would disagree that there aren't still racist, hateful, ignorant morons in America.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, we've just sadly taught a bunch of them how to not get in trouble and use the right words. And to me, I don't think that made things better. And we're living through it right now. It's 2025, and look what's happening in the world now. Because a whole bunch of people for decades and decades just knew how to use the right words, but their hearts and minds didn't change. In fact, maybe they calcified even more in an ugly way. So when it comes to our industry, I think that, because I tell you right now, I believe if you got everyone at Best Friends and they went out the way they described no kill, no, it wouldn't cause any problems. Because there's a difference between euthanasia and killing, right? Like, and you know this, I know this, informed professionals in our industry know the difference. You even said it, Ashley, that the Best Friends wouldn't even say you should keep that dog alive, right? Especially from the municipal enforcement angle. Public safety is a core premise of the reason you exist, right? And there's a need for that, and that's a top priority for you. And thank God you're out there doing that, right? I don't want to do that part of the job. Thank God we have people like you doing that part of the job, because it can be thankless, right? You have to be the bad person all the time, and we need to be more compassionate of that as well. And I don't think, but we're not having the conversations with each other, but more importantly with the public. Like, we need to do more grassroots information out there in the world. And I will say I've seen an effort but it's not enough. And I'll be the first one to say it's not enough. The whole reason I went to Best Friends from HSUS was they didn't have a grassroots
component.
They built it, and I ran it initially, right? And the whole idea was what you're saying right now was, let's get out there and better inform the public of two things: of what no kill really means, which is not no dogs die. It's that no healthy adoptable animals die in shelters, which I think there's no one who wouldn't agree with that. And that there's also a place for euthanasia, but we use it too often when it's not euthanasia, right? And that's systemic of much more other reasons why. So if we better educated your community, Ashley, on what it really is, they wouldn't be screaming and yelling at you as much, because they would actually know what it means. But that's not happening enough, right? And to me, when you ask, I'm a solution-based person. I'm not someone who likes to I think you have to identify a problem and then stop talking about the problem constantly and focus on the solutions. We tend to just talk about the problem forever, right? And I think you guys would agree. Like, we spend a lot of time fighting about no-kill in this industry, as opposed to making it better. And I think we just need to, we need to get a megaphone and scream to the public what's good about it and what it really means, and dispel the myths of what get it. Because, if you tell a lie enough times, it becomes truth to the uninformed populace. We're living it in politics right now, right? Like, lies and truths don't even mean anything anymore. It's just who yells the loudest about whatever bullshit they want to yell about, right? And I think in our industry, it comes down to better, and it comes back to that statistic too, that this is the same reason why pet acquisition numbers are so low and barely move over decades. Because people think shelter animals are broken, right? You guys know this. People think, meanwhile, the most broken animals that you're going to get is the schmoodle doodle bermoodle crazy dog that got bred in the backyard that's out of its mind, right? Like,
it's a full bred animal. What are you talking about?
right. The designer mutt that you spend $3,000 on is way more screwy bonkers than the beautiful dogs that we get to at least minimally assess and get a baseline understanding of in the shelter, but the public doesn't know that. The same way they don't know the nuance of the words that we talk about no kill all the time. And to me, that responsibility falls on us. We have to do a better job of informing the public on all these things, so then they're not carrying around myths. And you guys know, pit bulls are the perfect example. I'm 56. In this, and when I was growing up in the late 70s, little kid, and in the 80s, most people didn't even know what a pit bull was back then.
Yeah.
Right? No, people didn't know. The dogs that were scary were Doberman Pinschers and German
Rottweilers. Yeah.
Rottweilers, right? And I think we can learn a lot. The people who love Dobermans did an amazing job taking care of their breed, because two things happen. You hardly ever see that, and they don't have, and they, right? They don't, you hardly ever see them in the shelter. You hardly ever see them even in the public. And when you do, you know what you're seeing. They did a good job. The people who love those dogs did a good job. And the fear that revolved around them is gone. With dogs labeled pit bulls, breed identification is a problem, because 90% of most people don't even know what a pit bull really is. And everything gets called, if you're short enough muscles, you're a pit bull, right? But I think we can just look at what happened with that dog and see, like, any shelter in America, that's what you see the most of. And the public that's why all of us have them, because we know how lovable and sweet they are and how gentle they are and how good they are. The public thinks something different. But we have to stop to ask ourselves why that is, because the same thing applies to everything else we're talking about. It applies to pet acquisition. Like I said, more people get pets. Across the street from me, I recently saw, you may know, I never heard of a fluffy French bulldog.
Yeah.
And I asked the neighbor, I said, what is it?
They're being bred right now to be fluffy.
He got it from Texas. He spent $5,000 to get a fluffy French bulldog. And I said, what are we doing out here? And so to me, it comes down to information and focusing on what we get out there, because whether we're talking about no kill, or we're talking about pit bulls, or we're talking about adoption versus buying we all know, if you buy a dog, it's a high likelihood that dog somewhere came through what we would call the puppy mill breeding system, even if it's the sweet old lady in the backyard who pretends that her golden doodles are just her family dogs. We know the truth, right? We know the truth. The person buying the dog doesn't.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. And so to me, it's about, that's the issue. And instead of spending all that time fighting, instead of yelling at everybody about, I have friends who bought dogs, and I could scream at them and hold them down and tell them how awful they are all day long. Or I could try to inform them that, hey, take a ride with me to a shelter. Any dog, what kind of dog do you want? What color, what size, what behavior? I'll find you a dog by the end of the day. And it'll probably be free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And there'll be less health problems than the designer dog you bought. But if the public doesn't know that, we failed, right? And I think the same thing applies to all this other stuff. And I'm not saying it's easy, it's hard, because every day, both of you have to wake up and go to work. And it's hard to know that there's narratives out there that make your life harder, and narratives out there that result in the dog maybe not having a life. I empathize, I understand, and I think it sucks, but we have to fight the urge to fight about it and invest more time on fixing it. But let's focus on the solution, because I think we all mostly agree, to be honest,
Yeah, just having a conversation for sure.
Yeah.
As we get towards the end of our podcast, Kenny, is there anything else that you would like to talk about, or any cool projects you got coming up?
Yeah, well, thanks. So, right now I'm going to be consulting with a big municipal in Florida,
nice.
And a couple other ones. And to me, I don't need to self-promote. Like, what I hope is, and I really mean this, I'm not a BSer. I really hope what we talk about starts to become the norm. I really hope at these conferences we stop bullshitting about this and just, I really hope that consultants focus less on self-promoting to get more contracts. I really hope that we focus less on our tribal kind of my team is good, your team is bad. And we remember that right now, today, a whole bunch of dogs are going to die that don't have to friggin' die. Right now, today, there's people sitting on their porch trying to decide how they can keep their dog. And if a simple flea and tick medication so they can bring it inside, you guys know this, you deal with it every day. A simple, like 20-minute tutorial on how to walk a dog on a leash, a simple access to vet care and spay neuter, that these dogs don't have to suffer. Your lives don't have to be so hard. And the public doesn't have to be like stuck without the resource they need. And I just hope our industry can match our action with our talk. Because I think we've gotten really good at talking a good game, but I don't think we've moved the needle as far and fast enough on taking action. We need to get out there in the world. Like it's just, I'm 56 years old, and my fear is I'm gonna die. I'm gonna be retired on a wheel in my rocking chair, and we're still only going to be 30% pet acquisition from shelters, and we're still going to be fighting about all these words, and dogs are still going to be dying, and you're still going to be getting bit by dogs, and people are still going to be buying Labrasnoodle Foodle Doodles, and like, and I just hope, I hope you guys next 5 guests are people who love no kill, and you have positive, healthy conversations about it instead of like having to fight about it. And I hope that at the next Best Friends conference, which is great, I hope at the next one, you get to go do your podcast live and have a conversation about let's bridge the gap, right? Let's actually be united. We talk about wanting to unify the field. Let's actually friggin' do it. Let's really do it, and about race and poverty. Let's talk about for real doing things where if you're a 25-year-old black male with locks and you go to a shelter to adopt and you say, I love pit bulls, I want a pit bull, that you actually friggin' get one. Because if we're being honest, that kid, that young adult still gets turned down way, way, way too much. And it's not because people are racist and hateful, awful people. It's because we've allowed narratives and myth and silliness to poison the way we do our work. And so for me, I could go on forever and I talk too much, but I hope we just start like
a conversation.
Yeah, let's get over this nonsense because at the end of the day, dogs are dying because of our bullshit and we need to do better. And I appreciate you having me on to talk about it. And I take it seriously. So I try to no holds barred and put it out there honestly as best I can. So I hope the audience that hears this feels my intention on it and doesn't pick out a couple words and think I'm an asshole.
Nah.
Well, I'm gonna put a challenge out to our listeners. Like, our books are open. Like, if anybody wants to come out and talk about this, we are absolutely open to having that conversation. Hit us up on the keepithumane.com. And you can sign up to be on the podcast, whether you're with an organization, you got feels one way or another. That's one way for us to actually open up the conversation. And we'll post it out there. And I can guarantee you that to the best of my ability, but I know Dan for sure, like if we would get invited to, Best Friends Conference, and maybe there needs to be an open panel or something where we can have this conversation, real life, real time, see that we are all real people.
And we're on the same mission.
And everybody's experiences matter, regardless of what side you're on, or if you are or you're not, or whatever, And maybe Kenny, you came up with a good slogan: "Dogs are dying because of our bullshit." Like there, let's put on a fucking shirt.
Right, because the truth is there are no sides. Like that's the problem. Like just forget the idea of sides, because the side, there's only one side in our world. It's the animal.
The animal.
It's it's a circle of life.
Yeah.
And we're going to come back around to everything one way or another. So let's just fucking make it as easy as possible for everybody involved.
Yeah. And I will say, I so appreciate that you all cursed with me. Maybe cursing's the answer.
They say people that curse a lot are more truthful.
I hear it's more intelligent. There's a whole book about this. I agree. And I hope, who know, you never know, right? Maybe this conversation sparks someone to think differently and realize like we don't have enemies in animal welfare. And this idea that there's a team over here and a team over here is just silly. It's juvenile, it's kind of uninformed, it's unintelligent, and it's the enemy of progress. And like we said, it's our bullshit and animals are dying because of it. And until we stop, this is the way it's going to be.
Yeah.
And the other thing I want to point out too is that every group is going to have their own strengths.
Yeah.
And so that's why we have to work together because everybody has their own strengths. One of the quotes that my grandmother I grew up with that I live by to this day, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so we all need to work together for one common goal.
Exactly. And you can't have unity if you only talk to your own team.
Absolutely. Now, at the end of the podcast, Dan has been doing this great thing, which I think is amazing. So, Kenny, we're gonna put your name in a chat GPT and we're gonna say, who is Kenny?
Oh,
so
God.
we're gonna
AI you. Because I'm sure you're gonna love it, right? All right, so here, transition to animal welfare. His animal welfare journey began when he combined his community organizing skills with a passion for dogs, especially bully breeds, and training. For instance, he facilitated group dog training classes for youth he was counseling. He worked for the Animal Farm Foundation, behavior work, and then moved into senior roles into the animal welfare sector. At the Humane Society of the United States, he served in senior positions, including vice president of the companion animal department. He also played a key role in the evolution of their end dogfighting efforts into the Pets for Life program. He then served as director of grassroots advocacy for the Best Friends Animal Society, where he included creating strategies and tools to mobilize public advocacy for the no-kill movement. More recently, he joined the Companions and Animals for Reform and Equity as Chief Engagement Officer for a focus on equity, inclusion, and serving people of color and marginalized communities in the animal welfare space. Lamberti emphasizes community-based approaches, bridging animal welfare efforts with human social justice work, especially in underserved communities. He promotes diversity, equality, and inclusion in the animal welfare sector, not just saving animals, but how we serve people and pets together.
Yeah, wow, that was pretty accurate. I'm just glad it didn't put up any of my. There's a whole bunch of other stuff it didn't find, so that makes me
well, Kenny,
I was terrified when you said you were going to do that.
Well, Kenny, it was great having you and having a conversation. And, again, we put it out there to our community and listeners and watchers, come on the podcast if you have something that you'd like to have a conversation with us. And Kenny, honestly, we'd love to have you on again to see how your new endeavors are treating you and how you're helping these shelters and what's worked and what's not worked. I'm a big, my supervisor has instilled in me, why reinvent the wheel when other people are also doing good work? If you can implement it in your shelters or in your daily lives, why not?
Yeah, agreed. Well, I'm happy to come back on. And I'm going to reach out to a few great people. There's a good friend of mine and colleague named, she has a podcast called Critters and Cultures.
Cool.
Dr. Azalea Boyd. She's really awesome. So she'd be someone, she has a really unique and cool perspective on the animal industry. She's a veterinarian and a Black woman. And she's really explores the kind of cultural nuance about pet ownership and the industry, blah, blah, blah. She'd be someone really interesting, I think, to have on.
No, for sure.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna block all the hate mail I get at some point.
Well, thank you for joining us today, Kenny. Yeah. It was a great conversation.
Yeah, for me too. I enjoyed it.
So
All right, Lee.
Well, everybody check us out. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, you name it, wherever you can find your podcasts. YouTube, you can see the difference in my hands swelling and see that Ashley and I are actually two different people.
Yeah.
Um, but all of our socials, you've got our information, and let's keep helping people.
Help animals.
Keep it humane.
Humane.